It is amazing to see all of you here today for this fantastic panel. And I want to say, we see a lot of manals, but Zac is the brave one here who's maybe our diversity quota. You don't know. You don't know Zac.
Sorry, what was
It's
the
not a
question
manal.
again?
It's the opposite of a manal. But we're going to be talking, so the session is, of course, titled Food, Love, and Laughter. And, what's not to love about that? We usually like to start with something interactive. So maybe raise your hands if you don't love food. Love, who doesn't love love? And laughter, we've already had a taste of. So looking forward to having much more from all of our panelists. You'll find all of their books in the author signing tent right after, so we will definitely have time for that. We will have time for audience questions as well. But let me jump...
sorry, if you buy my book and it turns out you don't like it, I'll refund the money.
Really?
I'm not doing that.
Me either.
He's definitely got his royalty and his advance. That's why he can say that.
And actually,
Please buy my book.
On the bestseller list, not just in India, but in the UK, Zac. So congratulations, the Waterstones top 10, top 5.
Best British book of the month or
Amazing.
something like that.
Round of
It's
applause.
not even been published yet in a few weeks. So you'll be among the first people in the world to be able to buy the book before the Britons.
Which is nice. The Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
Okay, so we will start by asking you all, you have very different books out. You all have a very, diverse perspective when it comes to food. We'll try and get to love and laughter as well. But let me start by asking Karen. I want to ask all of you a little bit more about your personal journeys when it comes to food. Food is never just about food. In this latest book, which you can show everyone, Masala Memsahib, congratulations. You talk about the influence, your mother had. You talk about growing up in the UK where at that time the quality of Indian food in restaurants wasn't great, which may not be a surprise but might hurt a few people, so you might want to expand on that. And you also say, interestingly, Karen, you trained in French cooking first, French cuisine. So it's been a slightly roundabout way. Take us through your personal journey.
Well, of course, I'm Indian and I grew up in the UK eating my mother's food. And I must say, everybody says, did you learn to cook from your mother? No, I didn't. My poor mother didn't cook at all. She thought it was a burden and that women, actually, she was quite a feminist in her own way, that women should not be taught to cook. And so I didn't end up in a family where women cooked. But yeah, London is, and I'm going to say some things that people might not agree with, but everyone says, oh, people in England love Indian food. They do love Indian food, but there's the authenticity thing is not there yet. I don't think it's really good regional Indian food. It's a lot of it. And I've been been privileged to be part of 2 restaurants in London, both Dishum and now Colonel Saab. They've been hugely successful. But I have to say there's tandoori chicken on all the menus. There's CTM, in English, the UK national dish, chicken tikka masala on all the menus. So, we're still back a little bit.
Yeah.
Volume-wise, yes, but not necessarily quality-wise.
Tandoori chicken, we all understand. I remember a few years ago, we heard that there's something called balti chicken. Please say
Yes.
that's not so. What is it?
Well, I must tell you a quick story because they're the other 2 to talk as well. A few years ago, I decided to discover what was Balti food. And, it could be Balti, right? And there's also a place called Baltistan. So I went off to Ladakh and there is a place called Baltistan. So dragged my poor husband to Baltistan, which is on the border of Pakistan almost. It's, you can see the border. And it's this tiny hamlet with really extraordinarily bad food. And why it's bad is that it's really high up. So if you cook anything, especially meat, it's chewy. It doesn't get cooked because it's so high. And the food is really very simple. And I thought, where does this Balti come from? So all I can say, it definitely doesn't come from Baltistan. I can give you that in writing. And I think it has something to do with the restaurants in Birmingham and Manchester that used to serve in a Balti.
Okay.
Actually, in my book, I tell the truth about this Balti.
What's the truth?
You have to buy the book.
whether or not you want to try the dish.
I thought I was being
We'll
upfront here.
see.
You know?
Okay, let me ask Maria. You've had so many avatars. We've seen you in different, identities really throughout your career. You talk in this book about how you actually started cooking because of your children. And again, there's a very personal story. It doesn't get more personal than that. You're looking at, the cuisine from your mother's heritage. You talk to your sister, your grandmother. You wanted to bring a lot of this into your book.
So, yes, I basically never ever wanted to enter into a kitchen. And I remember my mum, while we were growing up, she would keep telling me, she said, you've got to learn how to make rotis. And I just could not understand when I'm studying so much, I'm priming for this amazing life that I'm going to have ahead. Why on earth do I have to learn how to make rotis? Well, many, many years later, after I had kids, when my son was about 2.5, and he had started eating food, all I could give him was a little boiled food with some stuff in it. And I had mothers come and tell me, so have you started on this? And have you started on that? And I was like, nothing. So I would keep calling my mom and keep asking her for recipes. And that's how I actually started with food. And then, of course, by the time my daughter was 2.5, so it was like a long time more, I actually fell in love with the entire process. That's when I went back to school. Then I went off to Tante Marie. I also started with French food. So it's Tante Marie in Woking in London. So I went there. A few years later, I went to Le Cordon Bleu. But at the end of it all, you just come back to your roots. And you just go back to your aunts and your family and the friends whose homes you've enjoyed food in. And I think that's where my heart belongs.
That's beautiful. And I'm sitting here listening to both of them and thinking, like, if I do this well, I'm scoping for an invite to these two lovely ladies' homes. Zac, your book is so different. Yours is not a cookbook. Digesting India. Can I have a show of hands of how many of you have read the books, by the way? It's helpful. Okay, we'll explain a bit more. In Digesting India, you start with actually how do we put this?
Opposite end
the opposite end of the digestive spectrum.
Exactly. They're the sort of bottom end of digestion.
Yes, we don't want to use the words, but basically
no, because the lunch will be served afterwards. No, I don't want to put people off food forever.
So let's put it this way: the classiest way I found of describing this is those of you who used to watch Anthony Bourdain. He would say, "What is a little GI distress when you're on the quest to find new flavor, new cuisines, new culture?" And your journey in your book really reminds me of that. So you start with perhaps the worst anecdotes. Maybe I don't even know if Anjum knew all of them, but like there seem to be quite a fair few of them. You're actually going through India. It's a culinary history almost. Can you take us through the personal? What was so personal about this book?
I think partly it's history, but more than that is the geography, like Indian culinary geography, and how there is the saying that if you travel 50 kilometers in India, the cuisine will change, the flavors will change. So in my book, partly I am testing whether this is actually true and to see what happens. Like in the book, I only fly once. The rest of the time is like overland travel from town to town, and how the flavors change as you move along, and also about the various, of course, the historical roots of particular Indian dishes that are like, some of them are quite ancient, and the fact that a lot of the things that we think of as Indian food would not have been possible to cook, say, 500 years ago, before Columbus discovered America and found that there were tomatoes, potatoes, aloo. I think all of Bihari cuisine could not exist without aloo, which came from America, and chilies as well. So there's a lot of these things that we sort of take for granted that, oh, this is Indian food, and you really realize that it's a part of a kind of a larger global culinary offerings. And then as you also have the things that in European food would not be European food if it wasn't for like pepper, which comes from South India, which is like a basic ingredient in all the food I grew up eating as a child. Yeah. So none of that would have been possible without Indian contribution. And even if you think of something like, now they say that every third chicken in the world is Kentucky fried. But when you think about it, the first chicken in the world was actually from Bengal, jungli murg, that was walking around. Then the Harappans discovered jungli murg and made it a deity and started worshipping it. And since then, of course, we know that it's the national bird of Punjab and the Indus Valley region. And the tandoori chicken, after Kentucky Fried, is the second most popular chicken in the world. And then it was only, like I mentioned, Columbus went there and got the tomatoes, potatoes, and chilies for us to cook Indian food with. Columbus also brought a chicken with him to America. And before that, you couldn't have Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Imagine.
If Columbus had not brought that chicken from, that, came from Bengal.
We'll all take a moment to process that nugget. No pun intended.
I know, This is probably a life-changing moment for all of you.
All of us.
Even for me, when I actually had the thought in my mind, I was like, my God, one-third of the world would not be eating chicken if it wasn't.
It's quite incredible.
Thanks to.
And actually, I will stay with you, Zac, for a moment, because we do know you as a writer of detective fiction. This is a slight, obviously, departure. I want to know what inspired that. And we've talked about how you don't find always like sort of culinary books to be, or travelogues to be of the highest literary quality. You wanted this to be literature as much as readable, accessible geography, history, and travelogue. You're also talking about so many places in different cities that have changed. You're not going to the biggest, most popular, well-known, restaurants or even dhabas.
I do go to some of the most popular and most
we're here.
restaurants.
We're here. But in the book, you document how you want to go and find specific things that are of the more authentic, perhaps.
I think for me, it started as a way of coming from a foreign country and trying to understand Indian culture. And the simplest way was, because I don't understand cricket at all, I have no understanding of Indian politics, but food was something I could connect with, and so it's like a trial and error process. First time I went to Bombay, for example, some people from Bombay might be here. So near Flora Fountain, you have all these like Mangalorean style restaurants. And so I went and looked at a menu, and they had something called pomfret on the menu. So in Swedish, which is my sort of original writing language, we use the French word for finger chips, which is pomfret. So I was like, and I had been traveling for months and having a lot of wonderful Indian food, but that was a moment when I felt like, oh, there's pomfret on the menu. They just misspelled it a little bit. And I love to have some finger chips. So I ordered like lots of pomfret. And the waiter was looking a bit dubiously at me and said, are you sure you really know what you're ordering? I said, no, yeah, of course. I know exactly what I want. And in comes this huge fish. And so I realized like what pomfret is a fish in. Okay, it was.
Smaller, that big. Maybe you were smaller.
Bigger than
I was
French.
smaller.
You were smaller and you thought the fish was big.
During the research on my book, my tummy has grown, as you can see. But I was a very thin gentleman at that time. This is like 30 years ago. So the fish looked really big. And my imagination is huge today. And it was one of those moments I realized, like, what an idiot I am. I should have listened to the waiter who was gently trying to hint to me that you don't understand India at all. So I think like my book is that sort of, apart from being a book about food, it's a book about self-discovery and to come back to your question, which I already forgotten what it was about, but I'm trying to imagine what it was about. It's a I think the great thing in India is that you have so many wonderful bookshops.
Yeah.
You can go and buy some interesting book by somebody like Karen or Maria or yourself, and then I can take that book to some nearby bar. Well, there are some dry states, so I avoid going there. But in the non-dry states, there's usually a bar near a bookshop, and then you order something nice to eat, a beer, and you start reading a book, and you
Yeah.
spend your afternoon that way.
Yeah.
So the book also reflects on this, like the various Indian and foreign authors who have been traveling in India, and what, say, like E.M. Forster felt about Hyderabadi food, which he was very taken by, and which nobody knows about, because the what he wrote about Hyderabad is like in a small passage in some other book, which is not like in one of his major books, or like Rabindranath Tagore writing like a short poem to market Indian tea. So you have like these authors combined with the food and drink, and
Yeah.
I mean, for me that's like the perfect life.
It's
That's
actually-
why I love India and want to be reborn here as soon as possible.
Somerset Maugham, Kipling. I highly recommend, all of you pick this up and get them signed by Zac. Don't return them, though that was a very generous offer. Karen, when we talked, about what you're writing, Masala Memsahib is the latest in a long line of books. And here,
I think it's my 20th.
it's your 20th book. That's incredible.
Well, I'm older than anyone else on the panel. I think.
We are all of a certain vintage, as I've been saying. It is so in this has cuisine from 5 states. We're of course sitting here in Jaipur. We're going to ask all our panelists what's their favorite Rajasthani cuisine as well. But you talk about how important Indian its cuisine is to you, but that we all need to be looking at this sort of blend of health, taste, and tradition. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the book is about identity. It's about my identity. It's about my journey. And it's a COVID book. So, I actually had the time to sit down for 6 months uninterrupted and collect recipes that I'd been collecting since I did TV, 300 years ago. So it's 35 years of a journey. And so people say to me, how long did it take you to write the book? Actually, not very long, because everything was there on the back of napkins, and I kept it in a big box.
Yeah.
When I started, there was no computers or mobile phones, so we had everything handwritten, and some of those pens are still there on the back of napkins. So it was a fairly long journey, and I think, like you, I've forgotten the question now. And
I'm doing
and
a
as I
terrible
said-
job, guys. Basically, I
Yeah.
need to have like cue cards for you to say.
Absolutely.
The blend of, you said the health angle.
yeah,
the health
so the
taste
health is important because I think, our ghar ka khana, our home food is very healthy. Unfortunately, this is not reflected in restaurants. It's not reflected. I mean, things are changing now. I mean, I'm very happy to see in the Authors Lounge this Ojasya, health food as well. So things are changing, but they haven't changed yet. So restaurants in India and restaurants abroad are really not a reflection of how we eat at home. So I wanted to bring forward maybe some not very glamorous recipes, but recipes of housewives, of women I came across. And people look at the recipes, and there's, Maharashtrian recipes, especially sort of Puneri Brahmin recipes that have 4 ingredients. And so for people who love to cook Indian food, they sometimes find it a bit strange. Oh, there's only 4 ingredients in that recipe, but that's how we cook food at home.
Yeah. And like you said, home food. This is something that, the writer Amitabh Ghosh also says, that,
Yes.
our food at home is so much better than what you get
Yeah.
at restaurants for this
And
cuisine.
it's very simple.
Yeah.
It's those 4 things or
Yeah.
5 things.
Yeah.
Because housewives who originally had these recipes didn't have the time to do 20
Multiple.
Lucknowi masalas
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
all that very complicated food is really food. Some of it is Mughal, some of it is from Lucknow, some of it is, but it's not the way we eat at home.
Yeah. Maria, can I ask you a little bit about what this journey was like for you, choosing recipes, that have been in your family really for generations, and what's perhaps the most interesting reaction you've had since the book came out?
So number one is, this is a book I use till date because they're tried and tested. They are recipes that I have actually lived with for 2.5 years. I've changed, I've fine-tuned, I've done all of this. These recipes that I have in this book are actually recipes that I collected from my mum, some from my aunts, some from my friends, some from chefs while traveling. Every time I go to a new city, I always try and learn at least 3 new dishes. This time, of course, we're so busy that I've not gone anywhere. But that is also in the book. So I really thought that there are 2 ways that you can do a book, a recipe book. You can do a book where you put recipes out that are absolutely mind-blowing and very difficult to do. Or then you do a book that is absolutely inclusive. So I wanted inclusive. So I decided that I'm going to put recipes in there that are really, really simple to follow. Recipes that I have absolutely cooked with my own hands without the help of anyone else. I didn't have anyone. I just did this on my own. And I saw to it that none of the dishes were styled. They were from the pan onto the plate, and it was short. So even the souffle in my book is short before it sinks. And what I did last year, 2023, is I did a series on Instagram that's called Cook the Book, where basically I took my book and I followed my own recipes and I just cooked it. So it made it even more easy for anyone out there, even if they're cooking for the very first time, to actually follow the recipe.
Yeah.
The biggest joy, I think, is when I meet people who tell me that we follow that recipe of yours and now that is part of our everyday cuisine. So that has been my journey, that whatever I've learned, whatever I've loved, I have put into this book.
Yeah, and I love the Instagram journey. It is very friendly. It takes away a little bit of the, fear factor some people might have. Thank you for remembering the question also. I think that I do want to ask you...
Still thinking about Zac's answer.
I think a lot of people are thinking about lunch. So we're going to go...
Just because we are senile, don't go on about...
I'm so sorry.
it.
Safe space.
Let's pretend that we did not forget the answer of the question.
We are going to, as long as we don't forget the answers, we're all good. I think that's what we're all here for. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, and I want you to start thinking about the questions you have, because we will be opening up to the audience very soon. What is the most, sorry for putting you both on the spot, and then Maria, you'll have the most time to think about this, most interesting dish you've had? What is your favorite Rajasthani dish? And keep everyone happy. Both of you. Who wants to go first?
You go first. I have 2 minutes to think about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you're a little bit older than me, so it'll take you a longer time to
Most interesting dish.
remember the question.
Most interesting dish. Favorite Rajasthani dish.
Actually, my favorite Rajasthani dish is that kher sangri, which you get
I was just going to say that. See, I could
You're
have done.
stealing my ideas.
I took it away from you.
Then you
can
definitely
just
have to buy
hungry
my
too.
book.
So you know the emoji, you can just do a +1. Be like, yes, me too. Everyone was quite happy with that answer. Well done.
No, so kher sangri, it was like something I was traveling in Shekhawati, and in the hotel they were serving this, and it was something I did not recognize ever having eaten before. So I asked the waiter, what is this? He said like desert bean. And I was like, desert bean? It wasn't a dessert, it was a main course. But then there was desert all around the hotel. And so then I went to the local market, and there was this fellow, he was showing me around these painted Havelis. He was like a historian. And so I asked him, like, what is this desert bean? So he pointed at like some sacks outside a shop, and these are there. So I spoke to the shopkeepers, and I bought several kgs. They said it'll last for 10 years, no? So I still have a couple of kgs left
Right,
to eat.
not bad.
But it's such an amazing earthy flavor, and one kind of understands the culture of that desert region, because I think the tree from where it grows has like extremely long roots. So it's one of the things that reach the groundwater level even in the middle of the desert, and otherwise, Rajasthani food, I mean, it's like just the other day, I almost became Rajasthani food when some dogs attacked me and started eating me.
Yeah, we heard. Terrible.
So I feel like somehow coming here to the Jaipur Literature Festival and talking about me writing about Indian food as like I'm eaten by Rajasthani dogs. It's sort of full circle, no? Like I become part of
On your way to being reborn as an Indian.
Exactly.
Got it.
So got it all figured out.
Yes. I'm going to come back for
We
favorite
have
dish.
5
Rajasthani.
minutes.
Okay, what
Rajasthani.
was his question again?
No, I will remind you after they go down. What is your favorite dish? Overall.
Rajasthani. Well, I think non-veg has to be jungli mas. And I have found one great one. You can meet me later. I'll tell you where it is.
Just one person was clapping for that. Okay, so we know the popularity.
Okay, vegetarian. Vegetarian, I love this papad ki sabzi that you get here. I love papad ki sabzi. So I think that's so more vegetarian in the audience for sure.
Maria?
So I think mine is a toss-up between lal mas and gatte ki sabzi. That's because I have a friend of mine, Sandhya Mridul, and her mother makes this really well, and that's why I love it so much. And the other one was...
Favorite dish of all time.
Favorite dish of all time.
In 2024.
In 2024
This year?
or all time?
All time, whichever is
So
easier
my
for you.
grandmother, she's now passed away, her name was Rosemary. She used to make this dish with mutton and East Indian bottle masala. And then she would put poha into it and she would toss it up, put lime on it and put coriander on it and serve it. And that is my all-time favorite dish. That sometimes when I think of it, I'm
It's your
like, why did I
grandmother's
never ever
lovely.
learn this?
Yeah.
But I try versions of it and it's never the same taste.
So food and love, you see what we're doing here. And nostalgia, that should be the other. Karen, favorite dish?
I think we're going to do what we talked about yesterday. It's not my favorite dish, but I think it's a good thing to talk about. The bad word curry. I know
For the
people know
laughter
this.
element.
What was the
Tell us
question
about
again?
Bad word. Your favorite thing.
Your favorite dish. Okay, tell us a
when
bad word curry.
when I was young, we grew up, we used to have cousins that visited in the UK. And we used to I don't remember, we had these little books where we wrote our favorite dish, our favorite actor, all this rubbish. And then we'd go back and forth. And the favorite dish of my Indian cousins, we're all Indian, but who lived in India, was bad word curry. And then I figured out what it was, and it was called ball curry. But we couldn't say ball, which was kofta. We had to say bad word curry. She knows because it's a very Christian kind of thing.
That sounds like the title of my next book, I
What,
think.
Bad Word Curry? I've given you a
I'll borrow
title.
it. I'll give you half the royalties.
You heard it here. Zach, favorite dish?
What was the question again?
Moving
What
on
was
from
my
Zach.
In India, how can you say favorite dish? That's like sacrilegious. I mean, there's
You
so
can
many.
take two.
See,
Pick
I'm
two.
I'm a
Pick two.
South Indian patriot.
Ah.
So technically, I should say vada sambar. I mean, it's one of those things like.
There you go. There
Yes,
you go.
Yes. And the thing is that. Like when I'm in India, I never miss European food. But when I go to Europe, I always miss Indian
Yeah,
food. And there's
that happens a
certain
lot.
flavors.
Aw.
And so I was walking in some city in Europe, and they had vada sambar on the menu. And I was like really like craving it. And you know, it cost like 1,700 rupees for a portion. And I was thinking like, it's better I just book an air ticket to Bangalore. It'll be cheaper for me.
That is, popularity ratings are rising again, Zach. But let me ask you about idli dosa, because this, forms there's a very meaningful encounter in your book. Can you
Right.
talk to us about the Malgudi days encounter and what idli dosa had to do with it?
Yeah, so when I was a young person, I'm still a young person, but like I was much younger at that time when I first came to India, like 33 years ago, and so I picked up this book in a bookshop called The Guide. And I already mentioned that I always love to pick up books, and it was written by an Indian author called R.K. Narayan. So I thought The Guide, perfect. It'll make me understand India. It turned out not to be a guide to understanding India, but a novel. And then I started telling all other people who I met, like, you should read this great novelist. And I read all the works by R.K. Narayan. And then at some point, the biggest Swedish newspaper commissioned me to do like a profile on R.K. Narayan, because there's always been that speculation around him that he might get a Nobel Prize of Literature, which is given out from Sweden, where I come from. And so I flew to Chennai, because he was living in Chennai at the time. And I had a pre-arranged meeting by post. I mean, he obviously did not use Twitter or Instagram or internet even. I don't think he even heard about internet in his lifetime. And so I call him up in Chennai, when I'm in Chennai, and he says that, sorry, I don't give interviews anymore. Because he had given an interview to Time magazine, and they took him out walking in Chennai, showing all the places. And then he got sunstroke and was hospitalized, and he decided to never meet another
Journalist. Yeah.
again. And so he told me this on the phone. I said, okay, that's really sorry. Then I fly back home to Sweden tomorrow. He said, no, stop, don't hang up. And then he asked me, what have you eaten? I mean, of Indian food, which was a strange question. But I said, masala dosa, idli, vada, sambar. He was like, can you come home in 1 hour? And let's spend the day together. And I had the most magical, I mean, it's there in the book.
Yeah,
You can
we're going
read
to
the
ask
whole-
people, but
I
that is a
want,
lovely,
yeah.
So because I had to repeat so many questions, I've eaten into some of your audience time. I apologize. I blame Zac though. Can we have hands up for questions? And the mic is right there. There's a lady in front. Anyone else?
Yeah.
So that we know where you are? Okay, we'll keep an eye
Yeah.
on that. Yes.
Yeah. It was a very interesting talk on food, and I agree with you all that home food cooked very hygienically and with mother's love is the best to eat. But why is the street food and restaurant food getting more popular these days with young and old people?
You want me to answer that, or you want to? Street food particularly, or fast food? Well, fast food is cheap, let's face it. Fast food is cheap, but street food, I had the most amazing aloo tikki yesterday, I must tell you, in Jori Bazaar, after after a very fancy cocktail. It really hit the spot. So I cannot say anything about street food because I'm guilty of that. But fast food, I totally agree with you. It's not good for you, but people have it because it's cheap. And my dream, honestly, is for somebody, I don't know why some industrious Indian businessman hasn't done it, but to do a chain of tandoori chicken and Indian chicken or vegetarian outlets in the world and beat Kentucky Fried Chicken. Really, we don't need Kentucky
chicken
Fried
ghee
Chicken.
roast, for example.
Yeah.
Just rename, like the chicken in a bucket, balti chicken again, but tandoori chicken.
But it should be tandoori chicken. Why are we eating Kentucky Fried Chicken?
Okay, let's club a couple of questions. The gentleman in the red, the lady in the blue, and then we'll come back to the front.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. My question is to Karen, ma'am. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. You are called the salad queen of India, as per my knowledge. And you have, one state that you have mentioned in your book is Kolkata, where mustard has been used, most other than any other state in India. And as you are salad queen, so, can we see any book coming up that gonna use not olive oil, but the mustard oil in your salads and also?
Good. Karen, we'll take
Certainly.
a couple together. One sec. Hold on. Can you remember the question? Yeah. Okay. Mustard salad. Yes.
Hi. So this is more a question about writing than food, really. But I think as a food writer, you sort of write about food as sensory, physical, as a physical bodily experience, the flavors, how it looks, etc. But then you're also writing about like memory, home, migration, all these ideas. And there's definitely a Venn diagram there because otherwise we wouldn't be here. But I was just curious about sort of how you unite those two languages or how you put them in conversation with each other.
Do you want to take this? Karen goes first, then
Did you ask me?
Yeah.
Let Maria take it.
Yeah. Karen, do the mustard one before we forget it.
Mustard one, quickly.
Yes, there we go.
Before
where
you
are
forget, yes.
Yeah, so yes, I started off doing salads in my career because I was doing European food in India because that's what I knew and that's what I'd studied a little bit. And I think, West Bengal, sorry about the Rajasthanis in the audience, but West Bengal has the most amazing ingredients. One is mustard oil, of course. One is panch phoron. The other one is your kashundi mustard, which is amazing. Your hilsa fish, which is amazing. So I think it's not just the mustard. I think I would love to see more regional ingredients, go across the country. It's very sad to see it's easier to get foreign ingredients in India often than to get regional ingredients.
Okay, Maria.
So I think food is all about memories. And
But we
for all
don't
of
have
us-
memories, no?
No, I said it is all about memories. It's about
Evoking.
touch, feel, taste. And I think for everyone who writes about food, you're not only eating at home. You eat when you travel, you eat with friends, you eat in, you eat you cannot live without actually sustenance. And I think all that somehow influences what you write. And when you write, somehow whatever you love, I don't know anyone who just loves food and not travel, who does not love the history and geography of the food. So I think all that influences what you write about. And every piece of vegetable and every plate of food comes with immense history, comes with emotions, and comes with geography. And that's, I think, how it is.
That's
I
lovely.
completely agree with Maria's answer because I can't remember the question.
The next one we're going to do is on the art of forgetting and food. Okay, one question in the back, and then this one, we'll club both.
My name is Pawan Kumar Upadhyay. I'm an officer of Indian Forest Service. My question is obviously to the panel. In a recent visit to Kaziranga, I happened to have food at Choran Ahem, where they cook the authentic Karbi food. It was totally vegetarian, with some delicacies like banana stem bharta and banana flower sabji. Do we have we explored our Northeast as yet regarding the food part? That's my question.
Good question. And yours?
So, hi. My question was for Maria. So, you said you were into the performing arts before. You even did a dance in front of us. So, my question was, you wrote a book about food or something. So, what was it more for you? Writing part or the food part? What was more close to you?
Good question. Yeah. Maria first and then the Northeast, if you all want to.
Well, Northeast, yes. Well, actually, my son has married a girl from Assam. So I have been introduced.
I'm married to a woman from Meghalaya.
There you are.
Yeah.
So
But I'm not her
we can
son-in-law.
answer your
Mic drop.
questions.
You're not.
I have been to Shillong many times.
There you are. We're all from the Northeast.
Explore.
So
Have you
I
explored?
really
Have
think
you?
it's worth exploring.
Yeah.
I think, like my answer on West Bengal, we need to do a lot more work on regional food.
I'm going to say +1 to what Karen said. And I'm going to answer your question. So the thing is that when, writing is something that just came naturally to me. I started off with food, but I started with blogging before I started with food. So I would write about my experiments on a blog. And I started learning food in 2010, went to school in 2011. So from 2010 to 11, I realized I had a lot to say. And I would put on a blog that whether somebody read or not, I wrote. And it was only post that I decided, okay, I'm going to do a book because I had a few book offers. So it just married one another. It's like when you have to explain something, how would you explain it? If I had to explain it to you without meeting you, you needed to understand me. So it was very natural for me to then you do this and then you do that. And what is the emotion behind it? So I think it just interwove itself into the book and it just flowed like a river.
I'll just add a small thought here. So about the Northeast, since the gentleman asked. So it's very interesting, like when you travel up the Brahmaputra from Calcutta side, so there's a point like up to Gwalpara, you still have mustard fish. And then suddenly you go deeper into Assam and the food becomes completely like a mixture of Indian and Southeast Asian flavors with a lot of herbs.
With Burmese,
and exactly, these kind of things. And it's fantastic, like that moment when it all changes. And even like I remember in Guwahati, I went to like a wonderful restaurant. You'll know the name if you buy the book. They said something, it's on the menu, it said something like, food can either destroy and kill you, or it can be the medicine that makes you live forever.
Oh,
something like that
is
was on the
nice.
menu card. And it was a very tribal cuisine type of restaurant.
Thank you for the questions. We'll try and squeeze in one more or two more, if we can go fast.
Hi, my question is to the panel at large. So this is about the authenticity of food. So, food is a very personalized experience, and the way that we make chai in Bengal is not the way we would make chai in Delhi. So, similarly, when we travel across the country, like all of us are now growing up in different cities, we are residing in different cities for work. So, automatically, the way we cook sort of is molded according to convenience, availability of ingredient, also by the people around us. So, my kind of food would not be the kind of food that's probably been passed down in my region. So do you think, and that's the kind of food that I would be passing on to, say, my friends or generations later. So do you think that takes away from the authenticity of regional cuisine?
But that's
Thank
a very
you.
good question.
Hold
I'd
on
like
one
to take
second.
that,
Yeah, Karen will take that one last question, and the clock is giving me a heart attack.
Yeah, so my question is to all the panelists. My husband is a very good cook, but his profession is something else, but he has a urge to cook always. And he feels
Good for
very
you.
happy when he is in kitchen. But he is not coming out of his shell of, as you people have come with a different profession as ma'am. So how can you encourage him? He's sitting beside me for taking it as a profession.
That is so lovely.
You take
Maybe
the
you guys-
encouraging husband, and I'll take the authenticity.
I just take 5 seconds to answer both questions, and then you can take the rest of the time. So, anybody who uses the word authenticity and a question on food twice in a sentence, I will not enter into a debate with you. And about husbands, I think they need support, because food is something like everybody knows that women are so much better at it. I mean, like, look at my co-panelists. I mean, they're so much better than I am at explaining anything about food. And like, I feel really humbled and inferior here. And if I was
saying
your
all the right
husband,
things.
you
Very
should encourage me to.
That is such a lovely, question.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll wrap up the.
Authenticity very quickly. Look, it's all in my book as well, about tradition, authenticity. Quickly. When people wrote about Punjabi food many years ago, and there was so much ghee in it and so on, they also walked 10 kilometers to work, right? And they worked in the fields. We don't do that today. So where traditional recipes are important, I think it's important to give versions which stick with authenticity, but also reply to today's needs. You have to do that.
Yeah.
We don't do the exercise we used to.
Maria,
I'm going to say this very quickly. My grandparents were farmers. So I grew up eating off the land. And I remember my grandmother coming back. She would go to the market in the morning, sell vegetables, come back with this huge fish, because they were 8 sisters and all of us cousins. So lunch every day was this one simple big fish and the few vegetables that grew on the farm, basically. Now, have I been able to replicate that? No, I've added to it. But the fact of the matter is that, yes, you do. You take the food forward and you do what's good for everyone in the family. And sorry, and this is done and it's over. And I have to shut up.
but also encourage the husband. One word,
so
2
I
words.
think
We're all
every time he
encouraging you.
writes, every time he cooks, stand next to him and write down what he's doing, and you make that book for him.
And tag Maria on her Instagram.